We certainly didn't expect to get drawn into all the drama that our actions created.
This analysis has been around for years and years. Jon Stewart seems to be coming to it a little late. Here's the clip of Jon Stewart. We'll see. I might break some of it down as it goes, or I might wait towards the end.
Shalom Aleichem. Trying to cover all bases. Listen, I hope this doesn't sound patronizing, but when we in the West drew your region's borders and set you up with perfectly functioning dictatorships, we expected a little better. See, the agreement was we would make up a whole new bunch of countries, some of which made sense. And in return, you would give us your delicious oil. That was the deal. You give us your delicious oil, and we take it.
So he's got it right to a large extent. Obviously, I'll assume he's speaking in terms of very specific instances as opposed to all countries, but all countries in terms of the U.S. empire, and we can say the West more broadly, all the countries in Africa, the Middle East, most of them, at least have been couped, pressured, or at some point, we literally drew the lines. In the case of Africa, which I think he's talking more about the Middle East, but in the case of Africa, literally a map of Africa without national lines was put on a wall in 1855 at the Berlin Conference, and the U.S. was not nearly as powerful then. Lines were drawn across Africa, and basically it was divvied up and given to white countries. It was basically like Belgium, you get this one, and Denmark, you get this one, and let's see, UK, you get this one, and it was just handed out. Germany and France, and the U.S. was there, but the U.S. was not handed any countries. However, we were obviously very important with the slave trade. And it wasn't all oil. In fact, oil was less powerful then or less important then. And it had to do with all kinds of resources, whatever resources the West wanted to steal: diamonds, gold, labor in the form of slavery, all of those things. It was just like, you get to steal what's here, and you get to steal what's here, and you get to steal what's here. And so it's not just give us your oil, but that is a big piece of it. Anyway, let me finish the clip, and then I'll tell you my bigger problem with this. But I do like, this is better than you're going to get from most. Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Fallon are not going to say this shit.
We certainly didn't expect to get drawn into all the drama that our actions created. And
then he says drawn in. We didn't get drawn in. We created the drama.
Now, these wars have got us all turned around. At one point, we're helping Iraq fight Iran, and then we're invading Iraq, and now we're helping Iran fight ISIS, and then we're using ISIS to help fight Houthis that are backed by Iran. I mean, in Gaza, we're actually bombing them and feeding them. How do you think that makes us feel? Oh, did you have a nice sandwich? Run!
He's right on a lot of that. Now, I've been saying, I've told almost the same joke in my stand-up act since 2008, 2009. Not about Gaza, but about the fact that in Afghanistan, the U.S. was paying the Taliban to allow the U.S. through so that we could fight the Taliban. I'm not kidding. And I'd done that joke for years and years. So this criticism, this analysis has been around for years and years. Jon Stewart seems to be coming to it a little late. So that's part of what's a little annoying. He talks about it as if it's the ruling elite or whatever he wants to call them, the U.S. government. But obviously the U.S. government is controlled by others in a corporatocracy, if you want to use that term, inverted totalitarianism. He acts like the ruling elite just head up the ass. We don't know what we're doing. Why do we pay the guys that were feeding the that? But it's not that they have their head up the ass. It's not just about stealing oil. If you look at Syria, not much of the oil is, we claim we own a third of Syria, right? We are occupying essentially a third of Syria. Not much of that oil is being stolen by us. But what we are doing, we are stealing some of it, but what we are doing is making sure that Syria basically can't sell most of their oil, because that third of Syria is the richest oil area of Syria. So we're making sure Syria can't sell their oil to others, which makes them incredibly poor. 94% of Syrians are below the poverty line. And the sanctions also help do this. That means that the petrodollar still has weight. If you had all of these countries, if the U.S. had not invaded and these countries had been allowed to go the way they were starting to go, you'd have Syria, Iran, Iraq, and Libya all constantly pumping oil into the world market outside of the petrodollar. If that were allowed to happen, the dollar would collapse, would not have nearly the amount of power it has. The U.S. could not spend $1 trillion on military. That's at the heart of it. The U.S. would stop being able to just print money the way we do. We added 20% to the U.S. Currency markets. We increased the amount by 20% during just the pandemic. And I would imagine that for someone like Jon Stewart, when they look at these things and they try and understand what's going on globally, it must be baffling to them, for example, that the U.S. has not stolen that much oil from Iraq. We have stolen, we've gotten some's gone to American companies, but from what I've read, it's not like all of Iraq's oil goes to the U.S. It's just given to the U.S. So the U.S. just walks away with it. The key is Iraq was selling that oil outside of the petrodollar. After we invaded, it now sells that oil inside the petrodollar. That's what gives the dollar the power. And, I don't know if it's that people like Jon Stewart don't want to get to the heart of this, or maybe they know that getting to the heart of this would get them in trouble. It's tough to say.